All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television program in the history of the entire universe. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, The Blackest Heart, and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Charles de Lint novel Memory and Dream. This book came out in 1994. It is part of his massive series of books set in the made-up city of Newford. I don't know whether Newford is in Canada or North America. It just says North America. Could be in the United States, could be in Canada, but it's a made-up city where about 50% of the Charles de Lint novels take place. Kind of like Castle Rock, Maine for Stephen King, or Derry, Maine for Stephen King, Newford for Charles de Lint, and the sort of, I've got all of the Charles de Lint books over here. He's one of my favorite authors, and someone who I consider a fairly good friend. There's all of the Charles de Lint books. I've got all of them. Charles de Lint is one of the authors I have met, who I have done conventions with, and who has signed a lot of my books. In fact, he signed this one, I think, at a convention I went to in Tempe, Arizona, or maybe one of the ones in Salt Lake City. I can't remember. Anyway, he signed most of the books. So Memory and Dream came out in 1994. Let's talk about the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration, specifically because this book is about artwork, art philosophy, artists talking about art and all of that. And if you followed my channel for any length of time, you know that I started my career not as an author, but as an illustrator. I illustrated Magic the Gathering cards, did some stuff for Dungeons and Dragons. In fact, I'm wearing a t-shirt with one of my paintings on it right here. One of my wildlife outdoor landscape paintings on my t-shirt. Talk about narcissism. When the artist wears a piece of his own artwork on a t-shirt in a video where he talks about himself. But it goes along with the themes that are in this book, so that will make sense in a minute. So anyway, let's talk about this book. Man, did I enjoy this. I remember reading it back in the late 90s when I got it. Like I said, it did come out in 94, but I think I read it in about 99 or something like that. And I was really taken with it and swept away. I think it was the book that kind of really got me hooked on Charles de Lint. So let's just get into it. What is this about? And in fact, as I was reading this, I'm going to be honest, I was thinking, my God, this book, the reread of this book, I haven't read it in over 20 years. The reread is so good. I'm enjoying this so much, it might just make my top 10 reads of the year 2023. It might just sneak in right at the end. This is December 20th. I think I'm filming this, or 20, I don't know what, it's one of the last days in December I'm filming this. This book might sneak in at the end as being in my top 10 reads of 2023. We'll see. Anyway, so the book is about the city of Newford. As I said, 50% of his stories are set in this city. This opens up in 1992 with Isabel. She receives a letter from her longtime old friend Catherine. But Catherine has been dead for 5 years, so this letter showing up in the mail is a bit of a shocker and a bit of a surprise. The letter is dated in 1987, so it's taking place in the early, like 1992, so it's a 5 years difference, yeah. So Catherine, her friend that is dead, was a storyteller, a book writer. Isabel was an illustrator and an artist. They were good friends 20 years ago, back in the early 1970s. And now we've got, with this letter, a mysterious death. There's a mystery. An inheritance is involved. The intellectual property rights of Catherine and her stories are involved because she's dead. And so we're going to bounce from this book. We bounce from the 1992 and then back to 1973 and we do a back and forth through the book. And normally I don't like jumps in time back and forth, but in this case, I loved it. I loved everything. I did enjoy the 1973 era of the story, which is about half of the story, a little bit better. So in 1973, when Isabel and Catherine were young girls in college, art students, they were known as Izzy and Kathy. Now, Izzy meets this very famous artist named Vincent Ruskin in Newford. I mean, he is world famous. And Vincent Ruskin can see that Izzy is an artist and invites her to his studio and says, I want to tutor you in the art. And she's like, oh my gosh, this famous artist wants to take me under wing and I will be his apprentice. And she is very, very excited about this. She's telling everybody and everybody's just like, oh my God, this is like a dream come true. How can this be? And then she gets there to Ruskin's place to teach her. And immediately Ruskin has her pose as a model. And that's how she starts. She just poses as a model for his own artwork. And she thinks, well, this is odd, because, it's not much, when you know what I'm talking about, when artists, when people pose for, it's like, they're not much clothes on. And this starts a relationship between Izzy and this guy, Vincent Ruskin, who's quite a bit older than her and kind of a trollish looking figure. But it launches them into this strange relationship of this young girl and this older man, this wizened artist and this young apprentice. And the relationship turns weird, abusive. I won't get into a whole lot because I don't want to spoil, but there are some scenes in here where I'm just like, run, girl, run. Run, girl, run. And this guy is manipulative. He is creepy. He is sneaky. This artist, it just goes ass over teapot. This relationship goes ass over teapot, but yet she admires the man so much. And he teaches her so much. And the discussions they have between themselves and the other characters. Like, there's another character named Jilly Coppercorn who was in this book. And by the way, we didn't even talk about the cover. We were going to talk about it. But we'll talk about the cover in a second. So Jilly Coppercorn was the main character in The Onion Girl and a few other of the Charles de Lint Newford novels. But she's all the characters from Newford sort of interweave between all of the many novels. And so it's pretty cool. But, we were talking about the cover, and this is where the art philosophy starts to come in, and the narcissism of artists starts to come in, and the pride of artists, and just the way artists treat each other. If people that paint in a different style than you don't respect them as much, and just, how art is art and like commercial art is not, and just all the different facets of art. And these characters, Jilly Coppercorn and Isabella and Catherine and Ruskin, they just all have these weird thoughts about art, and they're philosophizing. And young people do that in art school. Young people, they do that in art school. And especially if there's a real, like, successful artist that's kind of in their circle of the bubble that they're in, it really kind of enhances, well, who's really the expert? Is this guy that's making tons of money doing it the expert, this world famous guy, or do we know just as much about art as him? I mean, what is art? And that brings me, and maybe it's good that I held off on the cover first, because I love graphic design and cover illustration, and we always review the covers at the beginning of these, but I'm going to review it now, because I think for a book, such an elegantly written novel that's about art and the art scene and philosophies of art, such an elegantly written novel, such a poignantly written novel, such a character-driven novel, such an artistic novel, to have a cover so clunky as this is just beyond. I mean, I'm going to tell you, the painting was done by John Howe, and I have no problem with the painting. I think the painting is gorgeous. It wraps around, and it's a really nice, elegant painting. And somehow they butchered it with this army jeep green whatever and a weird ass fucking font, and I don't know what that is in the middle of it. Memory and Dream. It's got all the style, like I said, of an army tank. Oh, I mean, and you look at most of the other Charles de Lint novels have these elegant, graceful covers, and the John Jude Palencar cover, painting is great, and it wraps around too. But it's just, and maybe it's just the clunky and font with the ugliest green color on the planet. I'm just mystified at what the happened. Oh my God, who was the art director? I won't even say. Good Lord, it's right. It's written down. I'm not even going to say. But, dude, and this is a clunker. John House painting is great. John House painting is great. The rest of it does nothing. It does the whole painting disservice. John Howe, so just so you know, he was like Alan Lee. John Howe and Alan Lee worked on the Lord of the Rings movies as the big art directors there. A lot of the paintings, in fact, in the scene with Aragorn and Aragorn? Yes, Aragorn. Aragorn and Boromir on the scene in the movies where Boromir comes and picks up the shards of Narsil, and it's the first time those two characters see each other. There's a nice painting in the background of the scene where the sword is broken, and that was painted by John Howe. It's a big painting in the background. It's dope. It's like a mural. Great artist. Great artist to choose for a book, such a great book that's about art. But the rest of it, holy... I mean, they didn't even do his name, sir. I mean, I don't know. I mean, okay, I'm done with that. I've taken a nice old shit on the cover. We don't need to go about. So anyway, the story, though. The story is absolutely, absolutely fantastic. And I loved everything about this book. I was like, I didn't remember a whole lot. I just remembered it was a lot about art from when I read it in 99. But rereading it, I was like, oh my God, this has got some great, great, great conversations between these characters about painting and about art. I went over all that. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. It is just that good. It is one of the best books I've read this year. And this is a reread, like I said. So Memory and Dream by Charles de Lint.